Hello, and welcome to my channel, Hooray, I Divorced a Narcissist. I'm your host, Heather Ray, and I welcome you again. This is my second video. So my first one was just kind of introducing myself and kind of telling you briefly what my story was and what led me to this point to want to do these videos, because I do believe that it is my life's work to help educate others who are in these destructive, abusive, horrible relationships, whether you call them toxic or you call them narcissistic, or it's bad, and I get it, and I'm here because I get it, I get it, and I want to share, like my last video I said, I want to scream from the rooftops this information, and this is me screaming, from a mountaintop, I guess. So, here I am. So this video was all about after the point where he grabbed his six-pack and he left our house. And, I was left to pick up the pieces because there were many pieces. Not only of myself, but of our 3 children. And it's been hard and long road. Okay, it's been a long road. And I know you can do it. I did it. So I'm here to share what I know. So when you're first out of these relationships, I think it is so important to get into therapy. And it's just validating, because you're somebody that you can walk into their office and they have to listen to you. I mean, that's their I don't want to say it's their job, but that's their work. That's what they're there for, to listen to you. And it's so validating when you can finally have someone who's listening to you, because when you're in these relationships, you were never listened to, ever. I mean, it's so painful and hard, and I totally get it, So the first thing was getting into therapy. So after he left the house, actually, my first appointment was on our 22nd year anniversary. And, the first few weeks are just all intake and, telling. But you are getting to tell your story, and they are listening to you. And that is so freaking important, to have yourself listened to, So once you can have your story listened to, it's just so validating. And you can almost heal because someone's listening to you, and thank God, So anyways, that happened first. And that was in the scenario when the plane is going down and you're supposed to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help your seatmate, That's what I was doing. I was putting my own oxygen mask on first. But I knew that my children were there and also needed help. But I got to take care of myself first. So I did that for about a month. I went through therapy, and then I got my children involved in therapy. And it was so validating. Okay. That's so key and so important. I mean, that's why sites like this exist, and I certainly recommend you going to any narcissistically abusive related sites. There's Thrive After Abuse, excellent. Dana Morningstar, thank you, Dana. It helped me so much. That really was a huge moment for me to finally have some validation. But I had to get to that point. I had to get to that point where I understood what the hell happened. It was a lot more than he was just an alcoholic. It was a lot more than that. And I had sent an article to my sister-in-law before we even had the intervention. I sent an article. It was just one of those web articles, are you in a toxic relationship? And it was does your husband blame you? Does your significant other, it's never his fault, blah, blah, blah. And unemployment, would, and it was just like a list of all these things. And I'm just like, yeah, that's me. Yeah. So I sent this to her thinking, I'm going to get some validation. Well, that didn't happen. I was told, do you think we're stupid? Do you don't think we recognize that? So in that, it admitted to me that, yeah, they understand he's like this, but like it was never, ever acknowledged what that did to me, what that did to his children. Even though I kept asking, please validate what we're saying, So when you don't find that, and that's likely to not happen, to get that validation from their family, I mean, what are you going to do? That's why I sought it through therapy. So when I was in therapy and I went through the whole intake thing, and then you're finally given your diagnosis. Well, I was diagnosed with PTSD, which was shocking to me. It was shocking to me. Then I educate myself and I understand, yep. I can see why I would have that diagnosis. And again, validating. It's validation. So after I'd sent that article to my sister-in-law, did not get validation there, and then I started therapy, and then I'm just like, and you're forced to go through and like explain your life, and that's really helpful. I mean, that's like, no one's asked me about me before. Do I matter? Well, yeah, you do. You do. You matter. And that's what I found out. And I'm reading all these things, and you're clicking on all these different points, and you finally get led to an article that talks about narcissistic abuse. And you're like reading this, like, oh wow, And I remember I said this to my son, who was 18 at the time. He was at home. He would be starting his senior year in the fall. So he was still at home, even though he was 18. So I was blessed that I had that. So anyways, we're talking. We have a very good relationship, and kind of share the same tastes in television shows. And one of the things that he watched was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is kind of strange that I'm talking about that show right now. But I was like, I think your dad was a narcissist. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, well, could you share this with me? So he had shown me this clip from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. All about like what a narcissist is. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is how I'm finding out about this, through this video that my son found. Thank God. Because I was like, wow, wow, wow. I'm scratching my head. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I want to talk about this with my therapist. I've already been diagnosed with PTSD. She kind of like sees where I'm coming from. And I said to her, I think you might be a narcissist. She whips around in her chair, goes to her filing cabinet, fumbles through, and pulls out this characteristics of a narcissist. And I was like, okay. So we start going through these, one by one. Number one is self-centered. His needs are paramount. I'm like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. His way or no way. His way or the highway, you would say. Number two was no remorse for mistakes or misdeeds. No accountability. 3, unreliable and undependable. Yeah. And this is someone, I mean, I've had the same job for 15 years. I think at last count I was up to 10 different jobs he had. That's pretty unreliable. Yeah. Does not care about the consequences of his actions. Nope. Does not care. Projects faults onto others. High blaming behavior. Never his fault. I was like, what? That's a thing? This again, it was about having your reality distorted. If it's never his fault. It's something to do with you. That's bad. So we go through this. There's 47. Maybe I'll make a separate video so I can name every one of them. But like by, what was that number? 5. I got to 5 and I'm like, oh yeah, that's unmistakable narcissism. Absolutely. So then I went on a real quest, and I had a name. And you go to the library and you look at the psychology, section, and you're like picking out different books to get. And you're looking on websites and trying to find, the best websites. Thank God I found Dana Morningstar, Thrive After Abuse. I love her. You're looking through all these books in the library. You're looking through websites, and you find like a book that's like, and it's called Women Who Love Psychopaths. Okay. This is the 3rd edition. Actually, the first edition is the one that I had to actually, after I found all the different books in the library and I was still going through the websites, and I was like, oh, there's this book called Women Who Love Psychopaths. And like I'm understanding, like the person that I was in love with was a psychopath. He was personality disordered. I can't diagnose him. I have no, degree. Okay. But I know the symptoms. I know I know what he did to my life. I know. So I get this book, and this is actually the first book that I read. This is the 3rd edition. The first edition is the one I found at the library, and it was a lot. It's a lot to read, and it's a lot to take in when you're first out. But I'm glad I did, because it really it showed me the way. So I just wanted to share that with you real quick. This weekend, it's Sunday night, and on it's February 22nd, I believe. But my first video that I posted was on the Sunday before the anniversary of my mother dying. That was Friday, the 22nd. The 22nd, so today is the 24th. Anyway, my mother died a year ago on the 22nd. And that's really when I began to understand, too, that this whole journey that I've gone on with my ex-husband started in my childhood, okay? And it was important to me to launch this channel, to launch this site, on the anniversary of her passing. Because stuff like this has a beginning. It has a beginning. And for me, it was my narcissistic mother. It could be any number of things for anyone who's this resonates with, this information. So, anyway, that's just a quick 15-minute video. I do want to go through the characteristics of a narcissist more in depth on a later date. But again, if you like this, please subscribe to my channel. really my only goal in life is to share this information with everyone who needs to hear it.